Every morning, billions of people perform the exact same ritual. They boil water, grind a few roasted beans, pour a steaming cup, and rarely think twice about it. But what if I told you that the drink sitting beside you right now started wars, funded empires, created global fortunes, destroyed entire civilizations, and changed the course of human history? This isn't just the story of coffee, it's the story of espionage, smuggling, religious conflict, political revolution, corporate empires, and one tiny berry that refused to stay where it was planted. Coffee has been outlawed. People have been imprisoned for drinking it. Entire governments tried to destroy it. Kings fought to control it. Spies risked their lives to steal it. Millions were forced into slavery because of it. And somehow, after more than 1,000 years, it became the drink that starts your morning. So, how did a wild plant growing deep inside an Ethiopian forest become one of the most valuable commodities on Earth? The answer is far stranger than fiction. Every great story has an unlikely beginning. Coffee's begins with goats. According to one of history's oldest legends, around the 9th century, a young Ethiopian goat herder named Kaldi noticed something strange. His goats had become hyperactive. They were jumping over rocks, running around wildly, refusing to sleep, almost as if they had discovered unlimited energy. Kaldi followed them. Eventually, he found the cause, a shrub covered in bright red berries. Curious, he tried the berries himself. Within minutes, his exhaustion disappeared. His mind became sharper. His body felt lighter without realizing it. He had just discovered one of the world's most powerful natural stimulants. Or so the legend says. Historians still debate whether Kaldi ever existed, but here's what's fascinating. The plant certainly did, even today. Wild Coffea arabica still grows naturally in the forests of Ethiopia. Scientists believe these mountains are the birthplace of every cup of arabica coffee you've ever tasted. For thousands of years, the plant simply existed unnoticed. People chewed its leaves, mixed the berries with animal fat, used it as an energy snack, but nobody had discovered its true potential. Not yet. Because coffee's journey was only beginning, and its next stop would transform it from a forest curiosity into a spiritual weapon. At first, coffee was little more than an unusual wild plant growing deep inside the Ethiopian highlands. But one discovery would change everything. According to tradition, Kaldi carried the mysterious berries to a nearby monastery. He hoped the monks could explain why they gave his goats such incredible energy. Instead, the head monk dismissed the berries as dangerous. Some stories even claim he declared them the work of the devil without hesitation. He threw the berries into the fire, and then something unexpected happened. As the berries roasted over the flames, the monastery filled with an aroma unlike anything anyone had ever smelled before. Rich, nutty, sweet. Almost impossible to ignore. The monks rushed toward the fire. They rescued the roasted beans from the burning coals, ground them into powder, mixed them with hot water, and took their first sip. That night, for the very first time, they completed their evening prayers without falling asleep. Coffee wasn't discovered by scientists. It wasn't invented by kings. It wasn't created in a laboratory. It was discovered by people simply trying to stay awake. And that simple realization would quietly reshape the world. Across the Red Sea, another civilization was paying close attention. By the 15th century, coffee had crossed into Yemen, and this is where it truly became a drink. The Sufi monks of Yemen weren't interested in coffee because it tasted good. They believed it brought them closer to God. Night after night, They gathered inside their monasteries, hours of prayer, meditation, chanting, reflection. Coffee allowed them to remain awake, long after exhaustion should have taken over to them. It wasn't simply a beverage, it was a spiritual tool, almost sacred. Soon, farmers across Yemen began cultivating coffee deliberately. Terraced mountainsides that had once grown little else became home to thousands of coffee trees. For the first time in history, coffee became a commercial crop, and at the center of this growing empire stood one remarkable port city, Mocha. Today, the word mocha probably makes you think of chocolate-flavored coffee. But originally, Mocha was simply the name of Yemen's busiest harbor. For nearly 200 years, almost every coffee bean entering the outside world passed through this single port. Whoever controlled Mocha controlled coffee itself. The rulers of Yemen understood something long before everyone else. Coffee wasn't just valuable, it was priceless. If another nation learned how to grow it, their monopoly would disappear overnight. So they devised an ingenious solution. Before exporting any coffee beans, they either boiled them or partially roasted them. Dead beans cannot grow, no matter where they were planted. They would never become coffee trees. It was one of history's earliest examples of protecting intellectual property, except instead of patents, they protected an entire plant species, and for nearly 2 centuries, it worked. No country could grow coffee. Everyone had to buy from Yemen. Prices stayed high. Demand exploded. Money poured into the kingdom. Everything seemed secure until human curiosity got involved. Because history has shown us something time and time again. Whenever people build a monopoly, someone will eventually try to steal it. While Yemen controlled production, another empire transformed coffee into something even more powerful. The Ottoman Empire. By the early 1500s, coffee had spread through cities like Istanbul, Damascus, Cairo, and Mecca. But people weren't simply drinking it at home. They gathered together, inside the world's very first coffee houses. Imagine walking through Istanbul nearly 500 years ago. The streets are crowded. Merchants shout from every direction. The smell of roasted coffee drifts through the air. Inside every coffee house, people debate politics, play chess, tell stories, read poetry, discuss philosophy, share gossip, exchange business ideas, even criticize the Sultan himself. These weren't cafes, they were social media, centuries before the internet. And that made rulers extremely nervous. History is full of strange bans. People have outlawed dancing, books, music, even hairstyles, but few things seem stranger than banning coffee. And yet, that's exactly what happened. In 1511, the governor of Mecca declared coffee illegal. He argued that it was intoxicating, immoral, a threat to society. Coffee houses were shut down. Drinkers were arrested. The authorities believed that large groups of ordinary people gathering together could eventually challenge political power. In reality, it wasn't the coffee they feared. It was the conversations. The ban didn't last long. Higher authorities overturned it, but the idea had already taken root. Coffee had become political. Then came Sultan Murad IV, a ruler famous for solving problems with terrifying force. When he decided coffee threatened his authority, he didn't introduce regulations. He declared war. Coffee houses across Istanbul were closed. Anyone caught drinking coffee faced brutal punishment. Some historical accounts even claim repeat offenders were executed. Whether every story is completely accurate or exaggerated over time almost doesn't matter, because they reveal something extraordinary. Coffee had become so influential that one of the world's most powerful rulers believed it threatened his empire. Think about that. Not an army, not a religion, not a foreign invasion. A drink, a simple cup of roasted beans, had become dangerous. Ironically, While Ottoman rulers were trying to suppress coffee, Europe was falling hopelessly in love with it. Venetian merchants carried the mysterious drink home from their trading voyages. At first, Europe didn't know what to think. The drink was black, bitter, foreign. It came from Muslim lands. Some religious leaders immediately condemned it. They called it the devil's drink. Eventually, the controversy reached the Vatican. The Pope himself was asked to decide. Should Christians be forbidden from drinking coffee? Legend says, instead of making an immediate judgment, he requested a cup. He took one sip, smiled, and reportedly declared, "This drink is too delicious to belong only to the infidels." Whether those exact words were spoken, we may never know, but the decision changed history. Coffee was accepted. And Europe became obsessed. Within decades, coffee houses appeared everywhere. London, Paris, Vienna, Amsterdam, they became gathering places for scientists, writers, bankers, philosophers, and inventors. Some historians even argue that many ideas behind the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and modern capitalism were discussed over cups of coffee. The drink that had once helped monks stay awake was now helping shape the modern world. For nearly 200 years, Yemen's strategy had worked perfectly. Every nation wanted coffee. No nation could grow it. The monopoly seemed unbreakable, but history has one unchanging rule. Every monopoly eventually attracts a thief. In the early 1600s, Europe wasn't just buying coffee anymore. It wanted control. The Dutch, already masters of global trade through the powerful Dutch East India Company, understood something their rivals did not. The real fortune wasn't selling coffee, it was growing it. There was only one problem. Every coffee bean leaving Yemen had been deliberately boiled or roasted. They were useless for planting. If the Dutch wanted coffee, they would have to steal a living plant. Around 1616, a Dutch merchant managed to do what everyone thought was impossible. He secretly smuggled a living coffee plant out of the port of Mocha. Not sacks of beans, not roasted coffee, an actual living plant. It survived the long sea voyage to Amsterdam. Once it arrived, Dutch botanists treated it like treasure. The plant was carefully cultivated inside botanical gardens where experts learned everything they could about growing coffee. Then, the Dutch did what European empires had become incredibly good at. They copied it, mass-produced it, and exported it to their colonies. Soon, coffee trees appeared in Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, then Java, in present-day Indonesia. The climate was perfect. The harvests were enormous. Within a generation, Yemen's monopoly was beginning to crumble. In fact, Java became so famous for its coffee that more than 4 centuries later, people still use the word Java to mean coffee itself. Imagine creating a product so successful. Its birthplace becomes another name for the product. That's exactly what happened. The Dutch weren't the only ones watching. France wanted coffee too, but stealing a plant was only the beginning. Keeping it alive was something else entirely. In 1723, a young French naval officer named Gabriel de Clieu received one of the most unusual assignments in history. Transport a single coffee plant across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean. One plant, one mission, one chance. If it failed, France's coffee ambitions might disappear forever. No pressure. The journey quickly became a nightmare. Pirates attacked the ship. Violent storms nearly sank it. A jealous passenger reportedly tried to destroy the fragile plant. Then, disaster struck. The ship began running out of fresh water. The captain ordered strict rationing. Every drop mattered. Most people would have saved themselves. Gabriel de Clieu made a different choice. He shared his own drinking water, With the coffee plant, day after day, he became weaker, so the plant could survive. Imagine risking your life, not for gold, not for a king, but for a small tree. It sounds unbelievable, yet that tiny decision changed world history. Against incredible odds, the ship finally reached Martinique. The exhausted plant survived, barely. Gabriel carefully nurtured it back to health. It flourished. Then something extraordinary happened. That single plant produced seedlings. Those seedlings produced thousands more. Within decades, coffee plantations spread throughout the Caribbean, then Central America, then South America. Historians believe that millions of coffee trees growing across the Americas today can trace their ancestry back to that one fragile plant carried across the Atlantic. Think about that. One tree changed an entire hemisphere, but coffee's greatest expansion was still waiting, and strangely enough, it would begin with romance, or perhaps espionage disguised as romance. By the 1720s, Portugal faced a frustrating problem. Its colony of Brazil possessed ideal coffee-growing conditions: rich soil, tropical rain, vast amounts of land, everything except coffee. The neighboring French refused to share their plants. So Portugal chose another strategy. They sent an officer named Francisco de Melo Palheta. Officially, he was there to settle a border dispute. Unofficially, he had another mission: bring home coffee by any means necessary. Historical accounts tell an incredible story. During diplomatic negotiations, Palheta charmed the wife of the French governor. Whether it was genuine affection, carefully planned espionage, or a little of both, we may never know. But when it came time for him to leave, she presented him with a farewell bouquet. Hidden among the flowers were fertile coffee seeds, exactly what Portugal needed. Palheta returned to Brazil. The seeds were planted, the harvests exploded. Within decades, Brazil became the world's coffee giant. Today, it still produces roughly 1/3 of all coffee on Earth. One diplomatic mission, one bouquet, one hidden secret. Sometimes history turns on astonishingly small moments. It's tempting to celebrate coffee as an incredible success story, but that wouldn't be honest, because behind every flourishing plantation stood unimaginable human suffering. As European empires expanded coffee production, they demanded one thing above all else: cheap labor. The answer they chose was slavery. Millions of enslaved Africans were forced onto coffee plantations across the Caribbean, South America, and parts of Asia. Families were torn apart, communities destroyed, lives reduced to profit. Coffee became another engine powering one of history's darkest institutions. In Brazil, conditions were especially brutal. Workers labored from sunrise until long after sunset. Dense forests were cleared, heavy baskets carried across steep hillsides, coffee cherries harvested one by one under relentless tropical heat. Many plantation owners believed it was cheaper to replace exhausted workers than care for them. Imagine drinking your morning coffee, knowing it had cost someone their freedom, or even their life. This uncomfortable truth remains woven into coffee's history. Ignoring it would mean telling only half the story. While enslaved workers harvested coffee in the tropics, another revolution was unfolding thousands of miles away. In 1773, American colonists dumped more than 300 chests of British tea into Boston Harbor. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just political theater. It transformed everyday habits. Tea suddenly became associated with British rule. Coffee became something different. Coffee became patriotic. Almost overnight, Americans embraced it. Coffee houses sprang up across Boston, Philadelphia, and New York. These weren't simply places to drink. They became headquarters for debate, planning, and revolution. Ideas that would eventually reshape the United States. were discussed over steaming cups of coffee. It wasn't merely fueling mornings anymore. It was fueling independence. By the 19th century, coffee had escaped empires, survived smugglers, crossed oceans, sparked revolutions, and become one of the world's most valuable commodities. But its biggest transformation hadn't happened yet. Machines, factories, world wars, instant coffee, Starbucks, global billion-dollar corporations. And the surprising reason your morning coffee tastes completely different today, that's where our story goes next. By the early 1800s, coffee had escaped kingdoms, outlived monopolies, and spread across 3 continents, but for most ordinary people, it was still considered a luxury, something enjoyed by merchants, the wealthy, or the educated elite. That was about to change. The Industrial Revolution didn't just transform factories, it transformed coffee. Steam-powered ships crossed oceans faster than ever before. Railroads carried coffee inland. Factories developed machines capable of roasting thousands of kilograms of beans every single day. Vacuum-sealed packaging meant coffee could stay fresh for months instead of days. For the first time in history, factory workers, miners, farmers, teachers, and ordinary families could afford a daily cup. Coffee had become the fuel of the modern working world. And as industries demanded longer hours, coffee became the world's favorite productivity tool. Then, war changed everything. Again, during the American Civil War, coffee wasn't considered a luxury. It was considered essential equipment. Union soldiers received coffee as part of their daily rations. Many refused to begin the day without it. When supplies arrived, coffee was often unloaded before ammunition. That's how valuable it had become. Soldiers carried tiny hand grinders in their backpacks. They roasted green beans over open fires. Some even used rifle barrels and tin cups to prepare coffee in the middle of battlefields. Letters from the front mention coffee again and again, not medals, not victories, coffee. One Union soldier famously claimed, "Coffee is more important than gunpowder." It sounds exaggerated until you remember, an exhausted soldier makes mistakes. A tired army loses wars. Coffee helped keep entire armies alert. When the Confederacy's supply lines collapsed, Southern soldiers became desperate, unable to import real coffee. They experimented with substitutes, roasted acorns, burnt sweet potatoes, chicory root, anything that looked remotely like coffee, but nothing replaced the real thing. By then, coffee had become more than a drink. It had become comfort, routine, hope, even during humanity's darkest moments. The 20th century arrived, and with it, 2 devastating world wars. Coffee followed soldiers everywhere, from muddy trenches in Europe to deserts in North Africa, to islands scattered across the Pacific Ocean. Governments purchased enormous quantities of coffee to supply their troops. Factories struggled to keep up. Then, another innovation changed everything. Instant coffee. Suddenly, millions of soldiers could prepare a hot drink within seconds. No grinder, no roasting, no brewing equipment, just hot water. Simple, fast, reliable. When those soldiers returned home, they brought their coffee habits with them. Breakfast tables changed forever. Coffee became part of everyday life. By the 1960s, coffee was everywhere, but something had gone terribly wrong. Companies became obsessed with producing coffee as cheaply as possible. Quality suffered. Beans were blended with lower-grade varieties, roasted too quickly, stored too long. Flavor became an afterthought. Many younger people stopped drinking coffee altogether. To them, it tasted bitter, burnt, boring. For the first time in generations, coffee consumption declined. It looked as though one of history's greatest beverages might slowly fade away. But then, 3 friends in Seattle opened a small store, and without realizing it, They were about to reinvent coffee all over again. In 1971, inside Seattle's famous Pike Place market, three friends opened a modest shop, its name, Starbucks. Interestingly, they didn't sell cups of coffee. They sold roasted beans, brewing equipment, and knowledge. Their goal wasn't simply selling coffee. It was teaching people how extraordinary coffee could be. Business was steady, but nothing spectacular, until one employee changed everything. Howard Schultz. During a business trip to Milan, Schultz stepped inside a traditional Italian espresso bar. He watched customers chatting with baristas, friends meeting after work, neighbors greeting one another. Coffee wasn't just something people drank, it was an experience, a ritual, a place to belong. Schultz returned to America with a bold vision. People didn't simply want better coffee, they wanted somewhere to enjoy it, a third place. Not home, not work, somewhere in between. That idea transformed Starbucks into one of the world's most recognizable brands. Soon, coffee wasn't just caffeine, it became culture, identity, lifestyle. Starbucks sparked something unexpected. People became curious again. Where did these beans come from? Why did coffees taste different? Could coffee be treated like fine wine? The answer was yes. Small independent roasters appeared across the world. Farmers received recognition for exceptional beans. Baristas became skilled craftspeople. Customers began discussing flavor notes. Chocolate, citrus, jasmine, blueberries. Coffee had completed an extraordinary journey from survival to spirituality to empire to industry to craftsmanship. Today, more than 2 billion cups of coffee are consumed every single day. Over 125 million people depend on coffee farming for their livelihoods. The global coffee industry generates more than $400 billion every year. Yet every cup carries a hidden history, a history of discovery, faith, greed, exploration, smuggling, colonialism, innovation, revolution, and resilience. That simple drink sitting beside you contains centuries of human ambition, the aroma rising from your mug. Once drifted through Ethiopian forests, echoed inside Yemeni monasteries, filled Ottoman coffeehouses, crossed pirate-infested oceans, survived revolutions, endured wars, and reshaped economies around the globe. Coffee isn't just something we drink, it's one of humanity's greatest stories. So, the next time you take that first sip in the morning, remember, you're holding far more than roasted beans and hot water. You're holding over 1,000 years of human history, a story built on brilliance, determination, triumph, and tragedy. And chances are, tomorrow morning, you'll look at your coffee just a little differently. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history behind one of the world's most ordinary objects, you're going to love what we explore next, because every everyday object has a story, and most are even stranger than this one. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like the video. It really helps more curious minds discover these stories. Subscribe to Exhibit A, Everyday Objects, where we uncover the surprising histories hidden in the things you use every day. And before you go, click the next video on your screen. I promise. Once you start looking at ordinary objects differently, you'll never see the world the same way again. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.